Welcome to Military Spouse World 1-to-1, a weekday podcast featuring a military family shaker and mover, helping you navigate this amazing chapter in life. Here's your host, Dave Etter.
On this episode of Spouse World 1-to-1, we get to meet Lori Bell, a United States Air Force veteran who is now a military spouse. She is also an author and creator of the Yes Process and tells us a little bit about that. Hello, Lori. How are you?
Hey, Dave. I'm doing outstanding. How are you?
I am really having an outstanding day. I'm so glad you reached out to do this interview. You are a hero of mine, obviously, being that you're part of the Armed Forces Insurance Military Spouse of the Year program. You were the 2010 overall winner.
Yes, I was. That was a good year.
Bet it was, especially for winning.
Yeah.
And since then, you've gone on and done some amazing things. My gosh, yes. You are somebody that everybody needs to listen to and to learn from. Tell me some about what you do these days.
Wow. Where do I start? I scale down tremendously. Here's my one rule. I only do what brings me pleasure. What is born out of my own desire. I'm very much into my feminine flow. What my little bio may not tell you is I am very high on the woo scale. So
on the woo scale?
Yes, I'm very woo, very spiritual. I'm just now at the place in my life where I can be that without apology, and it's okay. So what I do now, my husband and I, we're at Tinker Air Force Base. My husband's a base commander, which is one of the reasons why I scaled back, because now as his responsibility has grown, so has mine. So now my focus has certainly changed to serving the community here on my base. And then if there is something that interests me, like this interview, I can add something to, and that also serves my purpose here, then that's what I engage in. So yeah, I mean, I guess as we get into our conversation, it's going to come out more about what I'm saying.
Let's talk about that for a moment. The fact that your husband is the base commander, the installation commander, and how that plays into how you have to portray your visual presence.
Yeah.
I teach Army family team building, and so I am instructing new spouses in the ways of how the military works. And one of the things I like to point out, but I can't do it from experience, but is to point out that once you get to that point where your husband or your wife is the installation commander, the garrison commander, even if it's just a divisional commander, you have a certain responsibility. If anything, it's tradition, and you traditionally have to be able to dress up a certain way, to put on that certain tee that has been going on for 60 years, 80 years, or in the case of like the Army is 242nd birthday, there are certain things that you do at those celebrations that just date way back to ancient history. You have to do it now because you're the installation commander's spouse. How has that slowed your role?
Let me tell you, this has been fun. Now, honestly, at this particular time where we're doing this interview, we've only been in the job for a little over a month. And I have to say, so I used to be active duty. And back when my husband and I were second lieutenant, wing commanders were old and crusty, and so were their spouses. So here we are, sitting in the seat where we, 20 years ago, almost 23 years ago.
You were grinning at that spouse going, I'll never be like that.
Absolutely. But here's what is exciting to me and very interesting, as I'm so grateful that here I am at the age I am, at the stage my husband and I are in our marriage, in our family growth and development, in his career, where we're stepping into a role in a time, even when you think about of our culture, our military culture and the societal culture, those roles that we grew up learning about, they're not necessarily applicable all the time. So what I mean by that is when we came into the job, I got all kinds of advice, tons of advice from people who mostly have never sat in the seat. Everybody will tell you what their perception of a wing commander spouse, what they're supposed to be, how they're supposed to act and dress, and what you're supposed to do, and you got to have all these teas and this coffee and all of blah, blah, blah. Well, let me tell you, I do not drink tea. Actually, no, I do like tea. I like hot tea. I do not drink coffee. And I do not like sitting around in a room, sipping on your little thing with your finger up. We just chit-chatting, right?
Wearing that little hat.
Oh, yeah. And doing all the customs and courtesies and all the things. I love tradition. Don't get me wrong. I do love tradition. But what I discovered coming into the role is that's not me. Like I said, I am woo. I like color, bright, big. I like doing things basically according to how I feel. I mean, if it's a good day to go to the whatever meeting for me, then that's where I'll be.
Woo is kind of like what Nature Boy Ric Flair from wrestling way back in the day would go, woo! Is that the woo?
Woo to me, and typically when I say woo, that's my own little language in my head.
I love it.
Basically what that is, I guess what you would say a 60s flower child, which I'm not, I wasn't born in the 60s, but that's kind of maybe the visual that it'll give you. I love meditation. I like nature. I like music. I love dancing. I love to be led internally with my own intuition through my own spiritual wisdom and guidance. That's kind of how I live my life. So here's one of the things that we have broken tradition since being in this role. I'm a mom of 3 kids, right? They're out of school for the summer at the time of this interview.
Oh, my.
My husband and his office sends me these invites to so-and-so's having a luncheon. There's a change of command. There's a such and such meeting. We got to do a tour of this, that, and the other. What I, even with my husband, say, hey, babe, look, you know I got the kids, right? So if you want me, you're going to get them. At the first event where we brought our kids, so what I did was I went to Kohl's, I went to JCPenney's, I dressed them up, dusted them off. I said, at least if we're going to be there, they're going to be cute.
Sure, absolutely.
The first event, and this is how I knew, and again, this is leading from intuition and showing up as an authentic mom and spouse.
Right.
I can't put on airs and put on, walking into the role and letting the role define me. I bring my own personality to it. The very first event we walked into, I had my 3 kids, and we used it as a training scenario where my son, my 6-year-old, he sees a tray of cookies. He goes straight for the cookies with his little paw on a cookie, and I'm like, hey, babe, do you see these little things? It's called tongs, and this is what we use tongs for.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Start teaching them how to do it.
Exactly. And while we were there, a young military couple, had a 6-year-old daughter, and they walked up to us and they said, we're so glad you brought your kids because we weren't sure if it was okay, and we just didn't know. And people feel so shamed for bringing their kids to stuff.
Well, yeah.
And of course, honestly, at my husband's level, most of the time, you don't have kids this young running around. A lot of times people have teenagers.
Yeah.
And they're going into college. They don't have the kid concerns that we have.
And anybody that's thinking about it, they might have caught an aha moment on this. And the aha moment that I got on it just now was, is somebody saying, well, I didn't know if it was okay to bring kids to this function. It's not a matter of whether or not it's okay to bring kids to this function. It's a matter of whether or not it's okay to bring your kids to this function.
Exactly.
If you know that you have got good parenting skills, you have well-behaved children, you have courteous children, and you yourself are courteous when they slip, because they will, then that's something that you can bring your kids to. Don't let anybody tell you you cannot.
Right. We picked and chosen what is appropriate, and just based on who's hosting the event. If it's a general with a couple of stars on their shoulder, and they may have a certain disposition, we probably don't want to bring our kids to this thing. If we know the honoree, we know them personally, it might be okay. So we picked and chose, and the only reason why I say that as an example is because it goes to the role. Typically, your kids are shunned away. You put them in a corner. Nobody knows where they are and what they're doing.
The way we were raised.
Yes. You don't go to stuff. And then we wonder why when our kids show up at stuff, they don't know how to act because they've never been in that situation.
No, they have not.
Yeah. So part of our role, I believe, here is breaking down those stereotypes, not necessarily taking apart tradition, but really defining what the role is for us, what it looks like for us.
Now, you've written a book kind of in that direction, too, haven't you? You've written a book called The Yes Process. Tell us about that.
Oh, wow. That book, I call it, it's kind of my coming out. Kind of like my coming out party, because the full title is The Yes Process, Discover the Journey of Becoming Yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Basically what that means is all along, my whole life I had been adjusting to role. You're supposed to look like this. You're supposed to do this. If you are this kind of person, then you're supposed to do this. One day, this was back in 2014, things that just didn't seem to be coming together perfectly for me as far as goals and aspirations and things. I began to question everything. I began to, I wondered about my own ability, wondered about maybe something's wrong with me. Maybe I'm just not in the right circle. I started down a line of questioning that really led to me picking apart all beliefs and ideas and concepts that have governed my life, including those about religion.
Right.
Then at the end of the day, and that day turned out to be 2 years later when it really started clicking for me, what I was left with was a pure way to be.
You've also expanded it into being an inspirational speaker as part of the Yes Process.
Well, as a result of writing that book, and then all along during the writing of it, and people that I meet, spouses that I talk to, everyone seemed to be saying the same things. When is it my turn? Or I just know that there's more for me. I'm okay. Life is not bad. I'm not struggling in the area, really. We got finances under control. Our marriage is good. Kids are great, blah, blah, blah. But I just feel like there's something missing. I took the book after writing it and realizing that, hey, this could be a really valuable tool. And I first started with the coaching program.
Okay.
So I turned myself into somewhat of a life coach, where I use material from the book as well as other intuitive-based things to really coach women or work with anyone, not necessarily military spouses. So my clients have been in various countries, 1 or 2 countries, all over the U.S., and we work together one-on-one for a period of a few months. From that, I realized, wow, one-on-one is great. I've had some good success there. And so I'm going with the flow. So it was like, not really feeling one-on-ones anymore. What do I want to do? I'd love to start speaking. I used to speak a lot, probably about 4 or 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then as my husband's career has kind of evolved into what it is now, and then, our family has come along with them, I'm noticing there's not room in my life, nor do I want it to be, for me to go off and travel here and there. So I'm perfectly happy staying local.
Right.
Just even here on my base, here in my city, just being here, creating impact here through the Yes Process.
Well, it's where it seems to be working. Well, what's the easiest way for anybody to get a hold of you to find out more about the Yes Process? Go
to theyesprocess.com. There will be information about what the Yes Process is, how to get the book, how to bring me to speak to an organization. I love doing what we're doing right now, because right now it's summer break. I got my kids in the other room, and it doesn't require any travel time. I love virtual speaking and webinars and teleseminars and local events as well.
Well, what if somebody needs to get a hold of you and talk to you? You've got a phone number that they can reach?
Sure.
There's one on here that says 803-250-LIFE.
Yeah, that's good.
Which is 5433 for those of you that are letters, does it correspond with challenge like me. 830-250-5433, and that'll take right to you?
That's it.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Lori, thank you very much for joining me on Spouse World 1-to-1. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
You betcha. You have fun. We'll see you later.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. Do you like Spouse World 1-to-1? Want to support the efforts to bring interesting and inspiring military spouses into the spotlight? Then go to patreon.com/spouseworld and become a patron. It's a great way to spread the love.
Military Spouse World 1-to-1 is a BDE Productions podcast. The views and opinions of the host or any of the guests are not that of BDE Productions or sponsors. Be sure to like this episode and subscribe to Spouse World 1-to-1.